WMCT is back in Season 2 for its second main event. And with it brings some amazing teams and some surprising newcomers. But anyway, if you like the video, make sure to like and maybe even subscribe. It means a ton to me. And yeah, let's get into the wildness of these teams. First up, we have Team Ruby with Applejacks, Riss, and Emily Cupcake Gaming. Now, this is a very interesting team, as this team features two people who are still relatively new to WMCT, and I guess Bedrock, but not fully. Obviously, the main person on this team to look out for is Riss. Riss is just super crazy at the game. Maybe not as crazy as some of the other people in this event, but he still is a very good player and someone to be watching out for. Obviously, he won the first WMCT ever, and while hasn't had as much success in other events, he did also win the Christmas one, which is another thing to note. So Rowan is a very solid player, and in my opinion, he has very good leading skills. While he may not be as strong in other areas like other super strong players like Defect and Rubixel, Avery, etc., he has as good of leading skills as them, which is definitely going to help this team out a lot. And then we have Jax, who recently won WMCT Game Night. I say recently, it hasn't been that recent, but it's the most recent event for WMCT, and which is pretty good. Although I will say their stats obviously come with a caveat because that roster is very different from a regular roster. But still, Jax is still a pretty good player despite the roster difference. I definitely think he can pull something off in the games that others might think he can't pull off. But he's definitely a solid all-around player overall. And honestly, with WMCT's format, PvP games are way less about PvP to an extent, and more about the other things that get you points. And then we have Emily, who did not have the smoothest event that some might ask for, but she is still a pretty solid player. She might not be as good as some of the other people here, or as experienced, but I definitely think she can still pull her own with knowledge and practice. And considering, Riffs has been training a bunch, I definitely can see this team being up there if they play their cards right. And I certainly think they can do well. Next up, we have Team Topaz with Zombie, Wolfie, and High MCC. Now, this team kind of caught me off guard. Mainly Zombie. You might think it would have been Wolfie, although if you were looking at the WMCT Discord before this event, and before even date night, you probably would have saw that it was kind of hitting that he was going to play with the fact that Prime was like asking him in DMs and stuff. Or like asking him to look at DMs and stuff. But anyway, this team, while is very crazy to see in the event, is also unfortunately very weak, as this lacks a lot of experience when it comes to this version of game. However, they can still pull through. Obviously, we have CC, who has actually played one of these before, which will help a lot. And he most likely will be trying to guide this team to victory. Obviously, he may not be as skilled as some of the other players in this event. But obviously, knowledge is a lot. And knowing just how the game works can help a lot. As it might be a bit confusing for the other two if they don't watch the update video or something. So that is something to keep in mind, that he can be a ton of help for information. And I feel like the non-PvP based games, he can definitely do very well in as well. And then we have Wolfie. Now, Wolfie is usually very solid when it comes to Java events. However, this is Bedrock. And a lot of things are different on here than on Java. So it's going to be rough to tell how well he'll do. I do think he'll do slightly worse than he usually does in events, but that's simply due to version diff and knowledge diff as well. But otherwise, if he does like watch the VODs, and he has, he like does reviews as well. So he definitely knows what to expect, but it's whether or not he can actually put his skills to the test and actually rise to the occasion for this. And then we have Zombie, who is known to not be the best at the game. However, it is Bedrock, which could change up the formula. They are not like the craziest player in the world, but obviously this event is way less focused on like certain skills than others. It's more about like overall teamwork, in my opinion, except for like one game. But otherwise, I think they can still very much carry their weight, despite the knowledge diff and experience diff. And well, I don't think this team will do super good in one game. I think they can generally do like decent enough to where they have a chance of winning it. Next up, we have Team Vivianite with Akuf, Exaden, and Shorky Games. And we love Shorky Games on this channel, just so you know. But anyway, obviously, Shorky is an amazing newcomer to see in this event. Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a fan, but you get the idea. But anyway, this team has the potential to do very well and possibly dominate. Obviously, we have Koof, who I think is the strongest player on this team. I could be wrong, but Akuf is definitely a very solid player in WMCT. He might not be as crazy as some of the other players, but he's still like very decent in like overall games. I will say his PvP skills are not as good as some of the other people, but that does not matter as much generally in this event. So otherwise, I think he's fine. He's very good at parkour and like knowledge and stuff. So I think overall he's fine on that. And then we have Shorky Games. We love Shorky Games, guys. I know I'm already saying that a lot, but we do love Shorky Games. But anyway, Shorky is a very decent player overall. Obviously, he does way better in Hive events, and the only real way to compare him to this is MCBC, and he hasn't done as well in that. But he's definitely still a very solid player overall. He's definitely better in like more movement-based games, at least in my opinion, compared to PvP. So he does have that going for him in the few games that don't have PvP. And I think he definitely can still pull his weight in that as well. And then we have X8, who I actually don't know that well in terms of skill level. I know they have played one of these, but the one they did play, I did not watch because I was busy that day. So I really don't have an idea on how well they are. Although I know they're like pretty solid at PvP from what I do know. No, so at least they can carry their way in that, and I'm pretty sure they're like very good actually. Maybe not as good in the other games, but otherwise they can still very much carry their weight. And that kind of makes this team very good because they balance out each other's weaknesses perfectly. And I definitely think this team could very much dominate the event if they play their cards right. Next up, we have Team Sapphire with Defect, Just Momo, and Royal Churro. Now, this is a very interesting team. Obviously, Defect is their best player, but that's mainly due to event diff. Because the other two have not played that many events, like overall. Maybe they played a Hive event or two, but they haven't really played other than that. So, as far as that, it'll be way harder to gauge them and how well they'll do in this compared to the other people. But I do think they'll still do pretty solid. Obviously, Defect is one of the best players in the event. Like, hands down, probably like top 3, along with like Avery and Plushie. They're just very solid overall at the game and very knowledgeable on tons of games. They might not have as good a record in PvP games, even though they are pretty solid. But I definitely think this team can do solid overall, even without PvP games. Because overall, he's still a solid player. And then we have Momo, who, like I said, I don't really know how good he'll do in an event space, but he is like pretty solid overall. Just like decently all rounded. Obviously, it's harder to gauge because Hive events are not as easy to like gauge with another event because it's not as accurate. But otherwise, he's still like pretty all rounded. Maybe a bit more PvP, which is a bonus for them because Defect tends to not do very well in PvP. So there is that. And then we also have Royal Churro, who I think is also pretty solid at PvP. And I definitely think this team is PvP heavy, but they can still do very well in all the other games, mind you. It just requires them like good communication and stuff, which I definitely think they can have. Obviously, it might be a bit more rough for this team, at least prediction wise, but I definitely think they can pull their weight and come through. Next up, we have Team Amethyst with Irish Potato, Evident P, and Gigi the Puppy. Now, this team might not seem the strongest on paper. However, this team probably has the most amount of playtime in this event by far. So this will help them out tremendously. Obviously, technically, Season 2 is different from Season 1. But they all have somewhat experienced it. And I believe they all played in the first one of Season 2, which helps out a ton. I mean, they won't be confused, most likely, on certain things that they were on in the first event. So that helps them out a ton. And with knowledge. Obviously, their top frag is Evident, although he didn't do as crazy in the last event as I thought he would. He still did very good, but it just wasn't as dominant as a performance as you'd think with that team. But he's still very good. More towards PvP than other games. However, he can do very good in other types of games other than PvP with the right amount of knowledge. And he tends to do better, like, overall, as an event passes. Like, his MCBC performances, for example, just kept getting better and better. So I definitely can see that with WMCT as well. Then we have Gigi, who also, like, pretty solid all around. I feel like she doesn't lean towards a certain game more than others. I guess maybe PvP slightly, but overall, she's just, like, well-rounded in all games, which is very helpful because these games are quite diverse. And then we have Irish, who technically is the weak link, but I feel like in this case, she doesn't really feel like a weak link because she has experienced it, and that can help out a lot. And also, her normal weakness is like PvP and sometimes movement, but the PvP games here don't feel as like PvP heavy or focused, which can help out a ton. And especially with Gigi and Evident being like a strong duo core, I definitely think this team can do way better than it looks like on paper. This team, I think, can dominate everyone. Last but not least is Team Pearl with Ian the Lad, Rubixel, and Titanium Zombie. And I low-key pooped my pants when I saw this. Not actually. But when I saw this team, I was like, oh, okay. This is a very strong team. I mean, very strong. It might not be OP, but it's still a very strong team. I feel like this team has no players. Their weak link doesn't even feel that much of a weak link. This is a very solid all-around team. But first off, we gotta talk about them individually with Rubixel first. Their strongest player, and Rubixel is very good. He has brought his own. Originally, in MCBC videos, I said he wasn't that good. And then he just slowly got better. Like, his leadership and skills just went up the roof. And his overall, like, teamwork as well, I guess. So that is extremely helpful for his team, as he is a very solid player, one of the best out there in this event. He might not be as strong at PvP But like overall, he's just very decent in like everything else. Parkour, like knowledge. It's just like he's just very good otherwise. Like everything else is like extremely good, and even PvP isn't that bad. Then we have Ian the Lad, who's just a good all round player, not too like strong or weak at anything. Maybe they're a bit weaker in PvP, but I feel like it's not that much weaker than like all the other skills. And then we have TZ, who is supposed to be, I believe, this team's bottom frag, but he can pop off. Like overall, I feel like he's also pretty well rounded, not too crazy in anything. But I feel like he can definitely go crazy in some PvP games, which can be amazing, which can help this team out a lot. Because I do think this team, while all rounded, is a bit weaker in terms of PvP, but they are still overall a very scary team. If I saw this team, I would be scared of how decent they are. They just have like no weakness, in my opinion. Even though their PvP is, in my opinion, their weakest game, they're just all around just solid at everything, not too weak at any game. So I think this team has the potential of literally like just obliterating this event, maybe even dominating to the point where like they gap, but I don't know about that. That I could be eating my own words there, but I do think this team can absolutely dominate the competition and just win by a ton. And now it is time for the predictions, and this is going to be pretty easy as, like I said before, while some teams look weaker than they actually are, they can still do like very well no matter what. But anyway, in first we have Team Pearl, then we have Team Amethyst in second, third is Vivianite, fourth is Sapphire, fifth is Ruby, and sixth is Topaz. So while this is what I predict, I could be completely wrong in the end, and maybe like Team Topaz or something. I don't know. But yeah, that will be it for this video. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded, but I'll try and start getting back into the groove of things. But yeah, if you enjoyed, like I said in the intro, like, maybe even subscribe. Means a ton. And yeah, bye-bye!